Welcome, everybody. We appreciate your joining us for the Disciplinary Literacy for Deeper Learning, MOOC-Ed. This is week 4. Our title for the week is Going Digital with Disciplinary Literacy. And I have 3 experts with me today who are going to share some insights about how they use digital tools and practices to support inquiry. I'm going to start and let each one of you introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll get started. Ian, we'll start with you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ian O'Byrne. I am an assistant professor at the University of New Haven, and I pretty much build and break things online.
Okay, Lisa?
Hi, my name is Dr. Lisa Hervey, and I am a digital learning coach here at the Friday Institute for Educational Innovation, and I'm also a teaching professor in the Digital Learning and Teaching Program, graduate program at North Carolina State University, and I am here to support all teachers toward excellence in digital learning and teaching.
Thank you, Lisa. Michael?
Hi, my name is Michael Manderino. I'm an assistant professor of literacy education at Northern Illinois University, and I'm very interested in the intersections between disciplinary literacies and digital literacies.
Great. And I didn't introduce myself because the participants already know me. I'm Hiller Spires, and I'm a professor at North Carolina State University. We're going to start off by letting each one of you tell us what one of your favorite digital tools and practices might be as you support students. And this could be students in the classroom, or it could be students, teachers, because I know all of you teach teachers. As you support your students to conduct inquiry. And why don't we start with Mike?
So I have a couple. One that I started with was simply using something like Google Sites, or you could use Weebly or Wix or something to build a website to start curating more digital sources that students would use those texts in their inquiry. And then one of the things that I like to do is embed like a Google form into it so that students can start processing those texts as they go through. So in a Google site, for example, right below, if you share a video or if you share an image, or whatever text you embed in there, then I could ask questions like, how reliable is this source? How trustworthy is this source? And then collect that data really quickly, informatively. So with teachers I've worked with, I've seen them collect that within, say, the first 10 minutes of working with it, and then be able to project the range of responses, and then that becomes a really nice grist for discussion around some more shared inquiry. If it's more individual inquiry, I've liked using had a project going with using some social networking and history, using Ning as the platform. The drawback is that Ning costs money to use, but it affords a number of different resources like a blog, a photo album, the ability to upload videos and things like that. So on the free side, I've also been working with some 7th grade students on blogging using KidBlog. So on that side, I like the production element of the inquiry, and then it can take more of an individual approach to the inquiry.
KidBlog is such an easy tool to use. A lot of the teachers I work with rely on that heavily. Also, we've had experience with Ning as well. Because you have to pay now, it's just not as functional for school-based folks to use. Lisa, do you want to share your favorite tool?
Oh, you know I can't be limited to one tool. That's just
do you only have a
All right. Okay.
Admonition.
All right. Here we go. So at the very beginning of any inquiry-based lesson or unit that you have kids to delve into, even if those are adults, they always have to start with a compelling question, right? And so I like to use something called Today's Meet, right? It's sort of the safe Twitter-like experience where I actually would invite my teachers and my students to actually start throwing out their compelling questions so that they can start to have like a kind of a social media back channel about their compelling question. How authentic are those? How relevant are those? And what do their peers think? Can I have one more tool?
Sure.
Okay, so my other tool, and this is really coming from a differentiated sort of perspective and stance, you know, if we ask kids to attack these really high-level, compelling questions, sometimes they might get into some really, you know, high lexile kinds of content that they have to decipher in order to understand or answer their question. So I like a tool called Rewordify, which actually can take some high-level content, breaks down some of the harder vocabulary, so it elevates that hard vocabulary not only for the student and it helps them access some of that harder content, it also elevates some of the vocabulary they might focus in on when they're sharing their projects with others and with their peers. Okay, those are my two. I'm out.
Great. And, you know, Lisa introduced me to using Today's Meet in an online course. So this semester I'm teaching content area literacy. And so, Lisa, I put that Today's Meet right in the middle of the course, and I'm using that as a way for the students to give me the ongoing feedback. And they love it because it's so easy. Thank you. Ian, what's your favorite tool and practices related to the tool?
Okay, so a couple of things. Number one, I agree with the use of sites and blogging and Today's Meet and having students use, you know, tools like Twitter and, you know, Today's Meet to have background discussions. A couple things I like to use often is I'll have my students create videos. I use Screencast-O-Matic, or I have them do images like screen captures using Sketch to document learning. I also, one tool that I'm very hot on now is Genius. Basically, Poetry Genius and Rap Genius. Now they've unfolded it so you can put any text in there and annotate it and mark it up. We can do the same thing in Google Docs, but it just looks a little bit nicer in Genius. But the big one that I'm really hot on is Storify. I love using Storify. I had a class last trimester where I had students. They basically had a series of topics they needed to learn about. Each week a different topic, and what I said is go online, search in social networks and your personal learning network, and use the textbook, use all these different sources. At the end of the week, come back and you basically tell me what you learned. So I'm using Storify as an assessment or a way to, as a like a summative assessment, so they can put the different links in there and tell me what they learned, where they learned it, and then in between each link share a little bit of the debriefing or, you know, basically comprehending exactly what they learned from it. So I love Storify as an assessment device and a way to push pause as students are learning.
Great. And some of the tools that you guys mentioned we have introduced in the MOOC, but many of them we have not yet introduced. So what we're going to do following this Google Hangout is take the ones that you've mentioned and make those available to our participants so that they can follow up with those. So we really appreciate your suggestions. The second question I have, and if you could just take just a minute or so each to address this question, you know that in our MOOC we are focusing on disciplinary literacy, and what we've done is take the inquiry model that we've been using since we started the New Literacy Teacher Leader Institute, and we have now adapted that for disciplinary literacy. And for 3 of the intellectual processes of the inquiry process, we've tried to differentiate based on the 4 core disciplines what inquiry might look like, say, if you're a mathematician versus a historian, as you're analyzing sources or gathering sources, as you're synthesizing, or as you are evaluating. So I'd like for you to take a minute, and if any of you have an idea about the unique affordances of a particular tool in relationship to a discipline. And you may or may not, because I'm not even advocating for that, but I thought if you have some insights on that, I'd like for you to share it with our participants. Ian, do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I think it's terribly important, and then you allow that to inform the tool use. Many of the tools that I talked about before, I think would fit into it. I think evaluation is obviously important. It's my whole dissertation. It's most of my research. But to me, the real challenge and the thing that we don't know about as a field is synthesis. And with any of these tools, to me, the challenge is providing opportunities for learners to push pause on their learning. Push pause on their learning, make learning a little bit asynchronous, and the tools allow us to do that. Push pause on learning so that they can think about individual elements as they add them in. So if you Storify or even today's Meet or have a blog, have one piece of evidence, talk about it, why it's important, what they learned, and then move on to the next one. And then sort of break in those little moments where students can push pause and talk about what they learned.
Great, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Lisa, do you have any thoughts?
Sure. I think the two things that pop in my mind in terms of the inquiry process are first access to content. So that's the big piece. So that's why Rewordify works for me. It helps all kids, no matter where they're coming from, they're able to access and tackle tough content online. And I also like another site called News ELA, which are current event articles written. All articles are written at 4 different lexiles. So that's always important, providing opportunity for access to content. And then the last thing I think about, and this goes along that not only do we want to pause and have them, synthesize, but once they're done synthesizing and they do their evaluation, then we want them to publish, right? So I know I've heard Google Sites and Weebly and Wix, right? But that whole idea is that in order for the actual public-facing piece of inquiry project is for me one of the most fundamental pieces. So trying to begin with that end in mind, where are you going to host the students' creations, their papers, their pictures, their videos? That in mind as you begin this process is important for me.
Thank you. Great advice. Michael, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I want to echo the idea that your disciplinary goal foregrounds everything. And in that sense, I think of a lot of the tools, then we want to think about what are the affordances of the tools to be most malleable. Because, for example, I was on Twitter, a few hours ago, and someone will post like 39 things for social studies or, 20 things for science. And I think those can be advantageous. But when we're thinking about this overall inquiry, some of the tools that are being mentioned can be really adapted toward the goal that the teacher has from the discipline's perspective. And so really identifying that first. And so I tend to gravitate towards more of the tools that I think can be more manipulated. And I think at some point when they get into the hands of students then, they take them in really wonderful directions and end up remixing those tools for different purposes.
Great, thank you. We were just finishing up week 2 in the MOOC, and in week 2 the participants began posing their compelling question, and we have a variety of questions and a variety of contexts across the 4 core disciplines. So it's very exciting to see what folks are coming up with. This week we'll be moving into, or week 3 will be moving into analyzing and gathering sources, and one focus we'll have for week 3 is getting close to close reading. And then we'll be working on our digital part, which this particular Google Hangout will be part of. To wrap up, I would like for each one of you to think about our participants in the MOOC, and right now we have about 675 participants who have signed up. Not all of them are active right now, but we have participants from many other countries, from different states in the United States. Most of our participants are from North Carolina. Think about what one piece of advice you would give to the MOOC participants as they are designing their inquiry project. And there are lots of different kinds of advice you could give, but what do you think would be the most valuable for them? And let's hear your best wisdom. We'll start with Mike.
So I'm actually going to borrow from a meeting I was just in where we were talking about evidence-centered design, Robert Masevely's work. And so I guess I would encourage the participants in whatever they're designing to think about what would be the evidence that they would accept from the students that would show that they're meeting their learning objectives, and then think about how they might be displaying that evidence. Is it through, multimodally, through one of these tools, through written, the combination, whatever that is, but really thinking about what's the evidence that they would accept, so that they have a chain of evidence that the students are indeed meeting the disciplinary objectives that they're setting forth.
Great advice. We like beginning with the end in mind. Thank you so much. Lisa, do you have words of wisdom?
I do. I'm going to borrow a page from Angela Mayer and the whole You Matter movement. As you're designing these inquiry-based projects for yourself and for your students, make sure that you take time and leave space for students to be able to tap into their passions, right? They're going to have to live with this compelling question. They're going to have to live with this content through this whole process. So make sure that they have voice and choice, and that we're definitely making sure that their passion is somehow in their project work.
I love it. Thank you so much. Ian, final words of wisdom?
Yeah, I'm going to steal a line from one of the pieces of artwork that my son has up on the wall over there, and that is play. Okay, I want you to find opportunities. We can do incredible things with digital tools. We can do incredible things in our classroom. Find opportunities to inject places for your students to play. Find ways for them to inject a little bit of whimsy into what they're learning. We can do incredible things to expand our boundaries, expand our definitions of text, and think about, what could and what should we be doing. We'll still attend to everything that Mike and Lisa were talking about, but how else can we have our students have fun and play while they learn?
Awesome. So we've got evidence, we've got voice and choice, and we've got play. 3 great suggestions as our participants design their inquiry projects. Thank you guys so much. Before we sign off, I want to have Jennifer introduce herself. Jennifer?
I'll get you unmuted.
Yeah.
We'll edit this out, don't worry.
So, hello everyone. My name is Jennifer. I'm a visiting scholar. Currently, I'm working with Dr. Spires, and it's a very exciting opportunity for me to conduct a research project with Dr. Spires. I used to be an NCSU student, and I got my Master of Arts in Teaching degree in NCSU. So I'm so glad to be back. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And we're going to be starting a project-based inquiry process with the school next door to the Friday Institute, which is Centennial Campus Magnet Middle School. Teachers and students there will be collaborating with teachers and students from Jennifer's school in Beijing, Beijing Royal School. So we have a meeting next week to begin that planning process, and we're very excited. Thank you guys so much. We hope that you'll join us in the MOOC if you haven't done that already, and see what's going on, because there's a lot of excitement on the MOOC, a lot of good exchanges of ideas. And we appreciate your words of wisdom, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.